Hello everybody, so we are cracking on with our Easter intensive course today, and we are doing today is the theme today is our quotes. So I just want to double check with you, George, actually, that I've got the right texts for you. So I've got let me just pull up the chat for a second. So I've got Lord of the Flies, Jekyll and Hyde, and Macbeth. Is that right? Excellent. Good. Just wanted to double check. I had a horrible feeling I got it wrong. I always doubt myself, which is not a great mindset to have. It's not something I'm going to be encouraging you guys to do. But I just wanted to double check and be sure. Okay, so what I always do is I try and find as many shortcuts as I can for these exams, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be doing stuff 10 times over that's already out there. And I cannot recommend highly enough searching for videos on YouTube, because they're usually pretty short. They're anything between sort of 10 minutes and half an hour, usually, sometimes longer, sometimes not. And that you can find top 10 quotes on anything. And quite a lot of people, one of my favorite teachers is Mr. Salles, Salles. You'll meet him in a minute. And he does some great videos, and he does like top 10 or top 12 quotes that you can apply for any essay on that text. And that's really useful, because it means you're not going, oh, what quotes do I look at? Which ones are good? Or I've got 10 quotes per character. And it's so much to remember. Whereas if you know you've got like 10 or 12 quotes that if you remember them, you can use them for pretty much anything, it's going to help you. So I'm going to be going through, we won't be watching the whole of each of the videos today, but I just want to give you a few examples of what there are and go through each of the quotes as a point of revision. So we're going to get through quite a lot today. And feel free to screenshot the quotes as they come up, and then you can put them in a Word document, print them, and you've got your 10 to 20 quotes, whatever it is that are for that particular text. And I will also give you the links. So right now, I'm just going to go and copy the links of the videos that I'm going to use, so that you have them and you can look at them in full if you want to. So the first one is Lord of the Flies. So that one is there. The next one is Jekyll and Hyde. Now his is quite a long video, this one, the Jekyll and Hyde one. It's about 45 minutes, but worth a watch. 45 minutes revision if you just sit and watch that, which is always great. And the Macbeth 10 quotes are there. So if you copy and paste those links, then you'll be able to access the videos that I'm about to share with you now. So let me just optimize for video. Here we go. Right. Oh, whoopsie daisy. I can't get onto, hang on, I've just got to wait for that screen to go up. Hang on a second. Is it gonna do? There we go. Right. So let me just move that across. Increase the size. Right, so this is Lord of the Flies. We're going to go through 10 quotes that everyone must know. This is only 10 minutes, so I'm going to play it through, and I might stop and interfere a little bit here and there to give you a bit more insight if I think it needs it. But this one's a lovely short one, and it's just hammering through those 10 quotes. So I'm going to increase the screen and press play.
Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. You're here to revise Lord of the Flies for AQA GCSE English Literature. And today we're thinking about 10 quotes everyone must know. I'm going to walk you through 10 key quotes and talk about why they're really great for you to know for the exam. Okay, our first reference today, our first quote is "Skull like coconuts." It's right at the beginning of the novel, first page, I believe. In the descriptions of the island, Golding mentions there being skull-like coconuts on the beach. And it's a really great simile because we've got this...
Just going to pause that there. So skull-like should have the hyphen, not like coconuts. Skull-like means they are like skulls. So just bear that in mind. If you're going to screenshot that, make sure you move that hyphen to after skull. It's just a bit of a typo he's done there.
Image of a skull there, and it foreshadows death. I think Golding really wants us to realise the trouble that these boys are in and the gravity of the situation. And it's quite interesting because when Ralph becomes leader, he completely overlooks the dangers, and that sort of foreshadows his failing as a leader. We get a good sense that things are going to go wrong in the novel, and it's something that Ralph is oblivious to. It's also interesting because this is a novel about good versus evil. That's the key opposition in the novel. And Golding uses a lot of symbolism to sort of communicate that to us. So we've got Skull Like Coconuts, but there are also conflicting, contrasting descriptions that are quite positive. There are miraculous throbbing stars in the sky that sort of contrast with this. So throughout the novel, there's a lot of opposition being used to sort of reflect that. Second reference. This is a good island, and that's what Ralph says. It's a novel about good versus evil. And when Ralph says this is a good island, we've already heard those descriptions that Golding's layered on the island. We know it's not a good island. It's a place where good and evil coexist. And ultimately, that's what the novel's about, because good and evil coexist in all of us. And that's what Simon comes to realise later in the novel when he...
Just going to pause that there for a second. So you can use this quote really well in either way. So if you're talking about good or evil, you could say, and you can say both things. You could say this is a good island is ironic because it's actually not a good island. It's actually the source of a lot of the evils that happen. You could argue that it is a good island. It's the boys and the humans that make the situations bad. And you could use that about the stars in the sky. You could say that that's further supported. That idea is further supported by the stars in the sky. It's not the island or the stars or anything else's fault. It's the people that inhabit that place that make it bad. So you can use that either way. You could say it's actually a bad island because that's where all the bad stuff happens, or it's actually a good island, but it's the people that make it bad.
Speaks with the Lord of the Flies. It's a realisation that Ralph doesn't have. So this is a good island is a fantastic quote, and it also foreshadows his failing as a leader. We know he's not going to hold on to power and that he's going to get usurped by Jack. He's going to take over, and it's a really interesting moment of foreshadowing here. Interestingly, this novel, in the first chapter, almost all of the action is spelled out to the reader in chapter 1. So, if you're wanting to revisit the novel yourself and read back through it, chapter 1 is the one to know really confidently. And here's another moment, hurt and crushed. If you know where this came from, this moment in chapter 1, then well done. And if you don't, Piggy says to Ralph that he doesn't want his name disclosed, his nickname from school disclosed to the other boys when they get together. And Jack says, "Shut up, fatty, you're talking too much." And Ralph, rather than stand up for Piggy and stand up to Jack, he says his name's not Fatty, it's Piggy. And Golding said later on when Piggy says, "You told them after all I said." Golding writes that Ralph sees that Piggy is hurt and crushed, and it makes us realise how vulnerable Piggy is. We know that he's going to struggle to be safe on this island, and it effectively foreshadows his death. Because what happens to him? He gets hurt and crushed. Next one, Daddy's ship. That's what Ralph seems to think will come to rescue them. So he talks about Daddy's ship. Great word you can use about this. If you call someone daddy, if I was to talk about my daddy, it's childish, but there's a great word for that. So it infantilises Ralph, makes him look like an infant, right? So it infantilises him. We know that Ralph hasn't got the maturity to be a leader and to keep his tribe or the islanders safe. So he talks about Daddy's ship. Interesting, later on in the novel, when everything starts to go wrong and when the fire's gone out and they've missed their opportunity to be rescued and the ship's headed off into the distance, he talks about his father. So it shows that he's starting to reevaluate, the island and starting to realise just the danger they're in. It's too late at that point. The end of chapter 1. Next time, there would be no mercy. Now, every character in this novel has got good and evil in them, including Jack. Jack's got good in him. That's the reason that he can't kill a pig at the end of chapter 1. But Golding writes, next time, there would be no mercy. So we know that Jack is going to change. We know that he's going to be a threat to Ralph. We know there's going to be violence on the island. It's a really interesting end to the first chapter. If you think about what Golding does structurally, the first chapter ends with this quite unsavoury tone. And the second chapter does as well. We've got the boy with the birthmark who dies. So Golding is ending these opening chapters in a sort of distressing way, just to make sure it's crystal clear this is not going to have a happy ending. When Jack puts on the face paint, he sees himself as an awesome stranger. Awesome is an adjective that reflects the idea of having godlike power, right? So it's a word that's used badly when people talk about things being awesome. Awesome means some power that cannot be really understood in human terms. If there is
what he's meaning there is that if you're in awe of something, as in AWE, if you're in awe of something, it's like, oh, like the heavens open, that is awesome. So if you are awesome, you are creating awe. And that's what he means literally here. It's not awesome like he was an awesome stranger. It's more like he was an godlike stranger. That's what he's trying to say there.
Is a god, then God is awesome. That's what that word means. So he sees himself as godlike. And at this point, if he sees himself as godlike, we realise he's not going to care about Ralph's power and his authority on the island. Like a wolf, and I like this quote because it's really straightforward. It's another simile. We had skull-like coconuts. Now we've got like a wolf, another lovely little simile. If you want to sound clever, it's zoomorphic. So we've got zoo, animal, morph, change. It's an example of zoomorphism. And this moment is where Ralph is fed by Jack. Ralph's the chief at this point. Jack kills the pig and he feeds everybody while he talks about the kill. And Ralph eats his meat like a wolf. So it reflects the idea that these boys are descending into savagery, but it also reflects the idea that Ralph is losing his status and his authority to Jack. Amid the roaring of bees in the afternoon sun, he found for the fruit they could not reach. So this moment here is when Simon is feeding the Litlands. There's all sorts of conflict happening on the island at this point, and Simon is one of the most positive images in the novel. If you were going to try and paint a picture of something nice from Lord of the Flies, there aren't actually many nice images from the novel for you to draw a lovely picture of. This is one of them. It's Simon feeding those boys, feeding the Litlands. So it's an interesting bit there. We've normally got a lot of heat and all, and a lot of people. People don't look after each other well enough on this island, and Simon seems to be outside of that, and he's certainly outside of the battle for power that's going on between Jack and Ralph. There were no words and no movements, but the tearing of teeth and claws is the moment where Simon's killed. It's zoomorphism again. Interestingly, we got teeth and claws. When the boys were talking, the Litlands were saying they'd seen a beast, they mentioned teeth and claws. So the idea that Golding uses that phrase again, teeth and claws, is to remind us that the boys have become the thing that they feared. And the only thing really to have feared in the first place was the evil that we're all capable of. Now this quote is one you have to know because Ralph and Piggy are involved in killing Simon. So Golding chooses his heroes to be involved in this killing just to show us that we've all got the capacity for evil. And if you get a question about Jack, he's involved. You get a question about Piggy, he is. Get a question about Ralph, he is. Get a question about Simon, it's his death. Get a question about good and evil. Well, this is a moment where you see that. There isn't going to be a reason why you're not going to be able to get this quote into your response in an exam. So it's one you definitely should know and be able to comment on. And this is one that's really easily overlooked in the novel, but it's what Piggy says when Ralph says that what they did to Simon was murder. And Piggy says, "It wasn't what you said." And the dash here, that pause, is Piggy not being able to bring himself to say the word murder. But it's better than that. That dash is humanity's inability to accept its own true nature and learn from it and be able to overcome the evil that we're all capable of.
It also shows Piggy's shame as well, that he was a part of it, and the denial that he just can't, like you said, just can't accept that.
So that for me is just a really poignant, brilliant, wonderful quote for you to be able to say something really sophisticated about. Looks really simple at face value, really easy to learn, really easy to remember. Do a Piggy impression 3 or 4 times and it'll be well and truly in your pocket. But it's got a lot of weight. When you look, beyond the surface, it's got that's full of really interesting, wonderful, rich analysis that you can provide. To end on, there are the quotes. You've got the 10 quotes from me that I think are definitely worth knowing for the examination. What you can do is go back over this video, listen to it again, and as you go through it, write all the quotes down on a piece of paper. And then you can hide them. How many can you remember? Test yourself. And then I would recommend doing a dance move for all of these. Like a wolf, do a wolf impression or something in the mirror, whatever. Try and come up with some ways of remembering these. Draw a picture, do your flashcards, whatever it is you need to do, but get these 10 quotes under your belt and in your pocket for the examination. Not literally, you're not allowed to take them in, but know them confidently and know what to say about them. Thank you for joining me. Do have a little look at the other videos on my channel. And
let me pause that one. Okay, so we've had a really good little revision on Lord of the Flies there. So before I move on to the next one, any questions at all? Anything you're unsure of regarding quotes for Lord of the Flies? Either post your question or just give me a no. I know you're okay. Excellent, good stuff. Okay then, so let's crack straight on, and I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go with Mr. Salles. This is my good friend. He doesn't know me. Just call him my good friend. He's got loads of great videos on quotes and things. He gives a lot of analysis. So I really highly recommend that you watch his videos. We're not going to have time to look at the whole thing today like we did that one just now because that was only 10 minutes. But I'm just going to go through each of the quotes with you. And I already have these written up so I can send those to you. So the first one is, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. Okay, so basically what Mr. Salles does is he takes 10 quotes that can fit every theme. Okay, so and kind of every character to some extent. So this you can definitely use for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. You can use for ambition. You can use for the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. You can use for appearances versus reality, because the whole thing that he's using here is a metaphor. And he's basically saying, this is Macbeth, and he says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. In other words, I've got nothing to make me do what I actually intend to do, what I want to do. I don't have the intention to actually do it. It's there, but I can't make myself do it. I only have ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on his intention. So he's basically saying that every time he thinks he's going to do it, he's ambitious, he wants it to happen. He's like, oh yeah, but there's nothing to make me do it. Until Lady Macbeth comes in and is like, are you a man or what? And does the whole manipulation scene. Okay, so that's your first quote. Your next quote, I'm going to fast forward through, that I like that he picks, is fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. So this is said by the witches, and this is brilliant. This is such a good quote to use because you can use for almost anything, and certainly for opposition, relationships between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, good versus evil, appearance versus reality. What's the other one? I think I missed one, can't remember. Good versus evil. So basically fair is foul. So in other words, what is fair, the whole situation of the fact that Macbeth is given the ability as a human to kill the king, or it could be any situation that you see that actually Macbeth lives out, is considered as fair because it's there, it's happened. But actually that fairness, that equality, that ability to do that is foul, because it means he not only has the ability to kill the king, but he actually does. And foul is fair. So foul or foul play, could be a play on words there. Foul play is fair because it's survival of the fittest. You know, if Macbeth is clever enough to kill the king, who is stupid enough to trust not only Macbeth, but his predecessor, so the previous Thane of Cawdor, is the one that Macbeth killed in the beginning, when he's like, when the soldier describes him and Banquo as brandishing their swords, slicing everybody down. And then before MacDonald is the guy who's the first Thane of Cawdor, before he can even say hello or goodbye, Macbeth has stabbed him and cut him from the nave to the chaps, so from the navel to the chops to the chin, and then cut his head off and stuck it on the battlements. As a result of that success, he later, after he's heard from the witches that he's going to be Thane of Cawdor and also king, he is then met by a messenger who says, oh, actually the king has said that you're now the new Thane of Cawdor. So the fact that the king, in the mind of someone like Macbeth, is kind of stupid, you know, don't actually say the word stupid, but maybe trusting, falsely trusting enough of someone like Macbeth, he's done it again. He trusted the first Thane of Cawdor, MacDonald, and he turned out to be a traitor. He dies. And then he goes, oh, Macbeth, you killed him. You're the savior of us all. You get to be Thane of Cawdor. And of course, Macbeth is even worse. He's the one who kills Duncan. It's like, Duncan, wake up. So the fact that foul has become fair is really disturbing. Everything's been turned on its head. Yeah, the whole thing. You could also relate this to the divine right of kings, where there is a certain order of things that's expected, where kings are born, their God appoints them before they're born to be king. That's the whole idea of it being, of king being someone who inherits through the bloodline. The fact that you know, that is considered, that's fair, and that's considered foul to someone like Macbeth. That's another way you could use it. And foul, the foul play, the murder, is considered fair, because actually, is it fair that, you know, the bloodline, it depends where you're born, if you who you're born to, whether you're king or not. Does that make you qualify as being king? That's a question you can bring up and discuss. Hover through the fog and filthy air. So they're talking about hell. Hell is the fog and filthy air. And then later on, that links to Lady Macbeth saying hell is, I think she says murky. Hell is murky. So this whole thing of things being hidden, darkness, fog, murky. If you think of murky water, it's normally dirty, like pond water, but not nice pond water. You know, that kind of, all those things about being dirty, muddy, gooey, horrible is not stuff we would associate with heaven. So you can also use this for the good versus evil. You can also use it for the supernatural, the fact that they're saying that something, whatever it is, whether they're referring to Macbeth themselves, Lady Macbeth, life, humans, we don't know. You can discuss that in any way, but whatever it is hovering through the fog and filthy air, which is hell. That is a brilliant quote. And it's also, it's very simplistic. So the fact that the rhythm of it is very staccato, it's very 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He'll go through all of the terminology with you, but I just want to get it out for now. You've got two options there. You can either say that they are, this is appearance versus reality. They appear as very simplistic, quite childlike in the way that they speak. They're not using particularly advanced vocabulary, and yet their predictions come true. Now, whether their predictions come true because they're tempting the person they tell, i.e. Macbeth, or whether they come true because they were always going to anyway, is something you can discuss. Okay. So next quote. Oh, we're still on Varys Fast. He talks about that one quite a lot. Out, damned spot. Out, I say. 1, 2. Why then 'tis time to do it. Here's the quote I was looking for. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier and defeared. What need we fear who knows it, when none can call our power to account? Now, this is an epically long quote. And what I would say to you on this is the reason that he's saying remember this whole thing is because there are bits of it that you can pick out for different questions. What I would say is definitely try and remember the whole thing if you can, but if not, remember you don't have to quote an entire section. You can refer to it, but of course you want to put in at least one or two of the words. So if you needed to say, when Lady Macbeth begins out damned spot and refers to hell being murky, you only have to put the word murky in the quotes, and it's a quote, it is a reference, it is supporting your answer. So you don't have to necessarily do the whole thing if it doesn't serve your answer or if you can't remember it. Just if you can remember one or two words from it that serve your purpose, quote those, and then you can embed them, which means you're not saying, here is a quote saying Lady Macbeth thinks hell is murky. She says hell is murky. That's a really kind of like signposted way. They would much prefer you to say Lady Macbeth believes hell is murky when she refers to it in her sleepwalking, or one of her sleepwalking episodes. That's you embedding a quote, and embedding a quote means that basically it's written in so that if you removed the speech marks, it would just look like a sentence you had written and you're giving your point. And the other thing that does when you embed a quote is it helps you avoid just giving a quote. What it helps you do is use the quote to make the point, and that's the bit you get the mark for. Okay, so if you just said Lady Macbeth says hell is murky, and this proves that she thinks hell is horrible, okay, that's an explicit idea. It does have support for your answer, which it asks for in the mark scheme, but it doesn't make a point. It doesn't tell us any more. Whereas if you said something like, if the question was about good versus evil, then you could say something along the lines of Lady Macbeth is definitely absorbed by the effects of being in hell when she is at the point of sleepwalking, because she refers to hell directly as being murky, and this makes us feel that she is in hell herself. This shows us perhaps that she has a conscience about what she's done. Rhetorical question coming up. Or does this just show that she's afraid of being caught? Yeah. So you've got a technique in there. You've got a quote, supported quote. You've got a reference to what's happening in the play. See that, and you're also doing that embedded quote, which means you've got your point in there as well. So a soldier and a feared. So you're a soldier and you're afraid. What need we fear who knows it? So who cares who knows that we've killed Duncan is what she's referring to, when none can call our power to account. In other words, we don't have to justify it. We're the king and queen of the land. Who's above us? Who can tell us off? Well, of course, underlying that, the answer is God. God can call their power to account. And that's what makes her go a little bit mad. If you want to say that she's gone mad, certainly she's sleepwalking, which she didn't do before. And she's carrying a candle, which if you watch this video, you'll see he talks about as being a reference to Christianity. Light is about Christianity and love and hope. And if there's only a tiny little candle, and later on, Macbeth says, out brief candle. It's interesting that initially she's the one that's saying, come you spirits that tend on mortals' thoughts, unsex me here. She's the one calling spirits to make her cruel and dire enough to help Macbeth make this murder happen. And yet later on, it's Macbeth that says, out brief candle. In other words, tiny little candle, tiny little bit of Christianity. She's the one carrying a candle that in a different scene. And yet he's referring to life going out. But it could also be symbolic of the fact that that tiny bit of Christianity, that tiny bit of goodness that's left, he's saying out, he's almost saying, let's get shot of it. And this is confirmed later on, which you'll see in this video. But I'm trying not to repeat what he says because I don't want to double up on anything when you can be watching this yourself. Oh, here we go. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. So, of course, looking at men and women in those times, women were seen as nurturing, loving, still to some extent now, caring. That's meant to be our nature. And their job was to raise children, produce heirs, raise children, and be a good wife. And what it's saying here is that the fact that she feels the need to summon up demons and spirits that are devilish to make her bad enough to do what needs to be done shows that this could support that she does have a conscience, that she does admit that she has some feelings and some nature of what would be considered then as femininity, in that she does have some caring, she does have some love, she does have remorse, because she says, I can't remember the exact quote, but literally just after this, in the same speech, she says something about stop up the path to remorse, I think she says. In other words, not only do I want you to make me evil enough to do the deed, I also want you to stop me being sorry for it later, because of course then she might admit it to somebody, and then she's going to get killed possibly, or certainly lose her queendom, which, let's face it, Lady Macbeth is not going to do lightly. She's talking about creating herself as being evil enough, which means taking on board the traits that are normally associated with being a man in those times, that thing of being cruel, and that's what she means by unsex me. In other words, take away the woman part of me. Next one. He's having a good old chat about that. Right, so this bit is really, really useful. So the three witches, they're talking about Macbeth and Banquo, and they say to Banquo, lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy yet much happier, thou shalt get kings, but though thou be none. So you can interpret this in so many ways, and you can manipulate it in lots of different ways. I'm just aware of the time there. So lesser than Macbeth and greater, literally, in the sense that Banquo won't be king, but Macbeth will be. Second witch, not so happy, yet much happier. So not so happy in the sense that he's going to be dead. Not so happy in the fact that he's not going to be king. Well, does Banquo want to be king? I don't know. Maybe he's ambitious. I don't think he would kill for it. We certainly know that in his nature, that he's certainly presented as not us. We're not led to believe that's what he would do, put it that way. We're led to believe that he is the antithesis, the opposite of Macbeth, so that we see that contrast in the reaction to the witches. So not so happy means not as high in status, perhaps, a bit like Macbeth, lesser than Macbeth and greater, but more about the happiness. Not so happy also because Fleance is hunted down. I mean, yes, he escapes, and maybe that's it. Yet much happier because Fleance escapes. Yet much happier because he's dead, and he hasn't got to live with what Macbeth has to live with, the guilt, the shame, the fear of being caught is so it's tangible, it's palpable throughout the novel. He gets more and more frightened, and it's fear that actually seems to fuel, that seems to be the spur that pricks the sides of his intent later in the novel, because Lady Macbeth is the spur that pricks the sides of his intent. In other words, the spur that makes him do the thing that he needs to do. She's the one that makes him kill Duncan in the beginning. But then later on, when he decides to get the hitmen to go and kill Fleance and Banquo, he has a conversation with her. It's almost like, don't worry your pretty little head about it, love. I've got this. And yet he doesn't kill them himself like he did Duncan. He gets the hitmen to do it. Interesting, because it's the first time he doesn't kill someone himself. So the beginning of the novel, he kills MacDonald in a really vicious, violent way, but with honor, because it's done on the battlefield and he's doing it to save his king and country. The second time we know of him killing is that he kills Duncan, which is one-on-one, someone he cares about. He knows it's regicide, and is of regicide being the killing of a king or queen. He knows that it is, he knows it's wrong. That's why he starts seeing the dagger is this a dagger which I've seen before me, etc., etc. So he knows it's bad. From that point, I don't believe he physically lays a hand on anybody else, but he does instruct other people to do it. Is that a sign of his guilt? Is that a sign of his fear? And it's almost like you can be in perfect denial then as well, can't you? If you haven't done it, it's almost like it didn't really happen, you know? So not so happy yet much happier. He actually refers later to a point where he says, Lady Macbeth says to him, why are you alone with your thoughts? I think we talked about this the other day. Why are you alone with your thoughts? They're worrying you, and these worries should have died with the people that you're worried about. In other words, when you killed them, you should have stopped worrying about them then. She says, what's done is done. You can't change it now. And he says, basically, it's really unfair that all those people that are dead actually are better off than him, because they don't have to worry about being killed. They don't have to worry about a traitor murdering them. It's already happened, and actually they're in heaven and they're fine, they're happy. Whereas he is living in this hell of fear because he's scared of getting caught. He's scared of someone taking his throne. He's, you know, he thought it would be this wonderful thing to be king, and actually it's not what he thought it would be at all. And then the third witch says, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So obviously we know that Banquo won't be king, but Fleance and his line will be. And Macbeth is obviously not very happy about this when he reflects later on, particularly when he's already king, because he's like, oh, hang on a second, my kids aren't going to be kings. But interestingly, we have no mention of any children for Macbeth. We don't hear of any children in the Macbeth household. We do hear two things, which Mr. Salas will bring up in a bit more detail, which is that Lady Macbeth says, I know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me. So not only does she know what it's like to feed a child, she knows what it is to love a child that she's feeding, which implies she's had a baby. It also says later in her unsexy here speech, take my milk for gall, which I always took, if I'm honest, I always took it as a bit of a kind of metaphor of her femininity, like that all women have the potential for milk, to producing milk to feed their baby. However, after having listened to some of Mr. Salah's videos, he suggests something slightly different, which is that it's literal, that she says, take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers, and the fact that perhaps she actually literally is lactating, which means that she's recently lost a child. If that's the case, it doesn't justify her behavior, but as he suggests in this video, it could be her payback to God in killing Duncan. It's kind of like an added bonus. Obviously she wants to be queen, but it's kind of like an added bonus that, well, if I kill the king, God and the divine right of kings means that the king is on this planet because God has put him there. I can't kill God, but I can kill the king. So maybe, you know, my baby's been taken from me, so I'm going to kill the king in revenge, and that will show God. Who knows? But yeah, there's all of that, loads of stuff you can link that to. Next quote. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this. This is such a pivotal point in the manipulation of Macbeth when she's trying to get him to kill Duncan, because she's tried everything else. She's tried putting him down and basically kind of like gaslighting him a bit. She's tried putting him down. She's tried being mean. She's tried saying, oh, you are nothing. You're not a man. You know, if you did it, then you would be a real man. Then she kind of uses her sort of sexual wiles as if, and she says, then you would be so much more the man. In other words, you'd be so sexy to me. I just love it. That doesn't work. So then finally she uses this, and this is another reason why I think perhaps it backs up that idea that that they have lost a child. Because if you think if somebody lost a child these days and then they turned around and said to their husband, you promised me you would kill somebody and we've just lost our baby, we've just been through that awful tragedy, but if I'd promised that I would kill our baby even as I saw it, loved it, smiling at me. She said, I know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me. So that gives us that image of her looking at this baby while it's feeding. And she's saying, while she's there in that moment of pure love and natural motherliness, she would pluck, so in other words, pull it off. It's quite a violent image, and dash its brains out. It's a really violent image, but it's made even worse if it's true that they have just lost a child. Because she's saying, we've just been through that tragedy, but if I'd promised that I would kill our baby, I would do it. I would put you above our baby. And I'm only asking that you do the same. You promised me you'd kill Duncan, and now you're saying you won't. Well, I would do it. What can he say to that? It's so harsh. It's so hard hitting. Okay, so that is her trump card there. And dash brains out of us. I just wanted to, you've done to this. Okay. Then this links back to what I was saying earlier. Out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This tells us of Macbeth's, his place on religion right now, and God and good versus evil, and the supernatural, of course, that brings it into that. Out, brief candle. So again, what I was referring to earlier, that thing of snuffing out life, but also perhaps the one bit of goodness that he sees is left is that in Lady Macbeth. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Considering, as most people think, Lady Macbeth is the villain in the piece. And then life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, blah, 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 blah. It is a tale. Life is a tale told by an idiot. Is he referring to the idiot being God? Full of sound and fury. That's his version of life. Doesn't sound like a very nice life to live, really. So he's not living his best life, is he? Bless him. Signifying nothing. So he just sees us as kind of the way we see ants. If you think of it like that, we don't think that ants sit there going, what's the purpose of my life? They just go about their business. And it's almost like that's how he sees how we are to God, or even that there is no God. He's almost completely devoid of any religion, any love, any Christianity, any goodness. It's all gone. Nothing means anything. Just, he is absolutely at the end of his rope, really. Let's get to the next quote. Just quite a while, because he talks for a while on that one. Here we go. Right, so the next one is my favorite one. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Loads of references. Serpent is biblical. It's a reference to the snake in the Garden of Eden and temptation and evil and the devil. Look like the innocent flower. So it's not just look like a flower, look like the innocent flower. So, you know, and she's the art of this. You know, the whole the banquet, when Banquo's ghost appears, she is the epitome of the hostess. Oh, Lords, oh, don't worry. Oh, my husband, bless him. He's always like this. Don't worry, just eat your dinners. It's fine. And then in the corner, like, shut up, for goodness sake. You're going to give everything away. You know, you can imagine her just sort of like pulling him aside and shut up, for goodness sake. And then, like, oh, yes, oh, it's lovely to see. Oh, Duncan, come in. Let me kill you. Yeah, like, she is the epitome of the serpent beneath the innocent flower, and looking like this wonderful woman, and she's asking him to do the same. So it's that good versus evil, it's appearances versus reality, it's the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. There are so many things you can use that for there. It's amazing. And obviously, if you can ever link it to society, which you can, society's absolute focus on religion and Christianity at that point would have been huge. Next one.
In the supernatural influence.
No, Mr. Salis, I'm talking. Thank you very much. So I begin to be aweary of the sun and wish the estate of the world were now undone. So basically, Macbeth is wishing that Well, there's two ways of looking at it. It could be he wishes he was dead, which it supports what he said earlier. It could be that he wishes the estate of the world. So it could be the world he's created. So it could be that he wishes he could go back and not have done the things he's done. The estate, what he's built, he maybe wishes was undone. So you can argue both points there. You can use it for either or both. You know, if you talk about both, that shows a really good eye of being a critic, and that's what they're looking for in your paper, for you to be a literary critic, for you to be able to step back, remember Google Earth, zoom out and go, well, I think it could mean this, but it could mean this, and here's the support for this, and here's the support for that. In my opinion, I think, though, it could actually be this over here. Yeah, so it's like you can pick and choose things. You don't have to say, it is this. In fact, you're better to say it could suggest, because we don't know. You can't go and interview Shakespeare, obviously. So you've got to be, if you suggest things and you suggest more than one thing, that's great. But obviously, if you're trying to make a point, so for example, if your point is that Lady Macbeth is evil, you can then contradict yourself and say, well, you know, there's this quote that says she's evil. But then again, could it be argued that there's this quote that shows that actually, you know, the unsex me here shows that actually, in order to be unsexed, in order to be cruel enough, she needs to call up the spirits of hell. So maybe she isn't that bad. Maybe she is, because she actually thinks of calling up the spirits of hell, and normal people don't do that. So you just see how you can have this little argument with yourself on paper, and they will love that because you're considering these ideas in front of them. But he's basically saying, I begin to be weary of the sun. So sun is the source of life, obviously, for plants and things like that. It's the source of joy in a lot of ways. We refer to sunshine as being joyful and bright and a lovely colour, and something, again, that, like I said, gives life. And it's also, if he's weary of the sun and he's weary of what gives life, again, that wish of being dead and free of all these fears and worries. Also the sun could signify God. So I begin to be weary of God, because anything like the sun was also seen as something that was dictated by God and was representative of God. You know, think of the sun coming through the clouds. Is it, I can't remember which thing it is. I think it's Macbeth in the speech, is this a dagger? And he's talking about the difference between Macbeth, looking at, sorry, not the difference. He's looking at Duncan and the fact that God and the spirits and the all his good nature, all his good qualities would be crying out to heaven, saying, save me, kind of thing. And I've got a feeling it's Lady Macbeth that says this quote. But anyway, there's a moment where they say that that heaven comes through the blanket of the clouds to cry hold, and that image of the sun coming through the clouds linking to God coming through the clouds. We do kind of think of that, don't we, when we see angels and spirits and things like that, good spirits appear in films, they're always like bathed in sunshine. Think of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings when he appears, when he's been he has that rebirth. I don't know if you've seen it, but you know, it's this light is associated with heaven, with goodness, with purity, and that's where the sun comes in. I think that might be that's the last one for Macbeth. So let me just, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to really whiz through Jekyll and Hyde. Okay, so the first one, it was like some damned juggernaut, and this one links to, let me just get him out of the way so we can see all the themes that he's written down. There we go. Okay, so this links to Christianity, hypocrisy, science, Gothic, and repressed desire. I can't see the one who's got his hand on this. Here. Detective. There we go. Okay, so lots of different things there. The next one, let me see. I saw that Sawbones turned sick and white with the desire to kill him. So obviously this is talking about the Doctor, and he refers to him as being Scottish. And that is, there's this association that the Scottish are quite hard and very, traditionally we know the Scottish as being very direct. So the fact that even Sawbones, who is completely practical, pragmatic, even he feels the emotion and that hatred for Hyde. So it just shows the extent to which we know that Hyde affects people. And the themes that relates to are Christianity, hypocrisy, science, detective, gothic, and repressed desire. So you can see how what I love about Mr. Salas is he does link all of his quotes to as many themes as possible, if not all of them. So the next one, it's going to let me do it. It's going to do Lally for a second. Here we go. So this one, particularly about repressed desires, is the curtains of the bed plucked apart, and lo, there would stand a figure to whom power was given, and he must rise and do its bidding. So this desire to be God, basically, and have that superiority and that power. And again, links to all the themes. I think his point in all of this is that all of his quotes link to all the themes. Okay. If he would just get out of the way for a second so I can see the full quote. That's just made it worse. Okay. I read Satan's signature upon a face. It is on that of your new friend. Satan's signature on the face of your new friend. That's relating to the fact that if you sell your soul to the devil, your soul belongs to the devil. And that thing of a contract, the signature is like a contract. So it kind of implies that Hyde is the soul. The soul belongs to Satan, which is implied throughout the whole novel, as we know, with the good and evil. But we also know that obviously Jekyll and Hyde are the same person, but split in two. So is it Jekyll's soul that has been sold to the devil, or does Jekyll and Hyde have the same soul? That's a really interesting question. Definitely something you could discuss in your answer paper. Let's get to the next quote. And again, I would highly recommend you watch these videos. They're going to go into much more depth. But I'm just doing this so you've got the quotes there ready to go so you can revise them. Evolution versus Christianity, with ape-like fury hailing down a storm of blows under which the bones were audibly shattered. I mean, God, makes me shiver. So the fact that it's evolution versus Christianity was huge. Science basically was a threat to Christianity, and Christianity was what everyone based their humanity on. You know, if there was no Christianity, what does that mean? We all go about murdering each other? That was the fear. And so anybody, any whiff of science initially in the Victorian times was seen as really, really frightening. And it was definitely, it's like Marmite, you love it or hate it. So you were either on science's side or you were on religion's side, and you couldn't be on both. And there's an element of that which comes into today's society. And I get challenged on this quite a lot because I'm actually a confirmed Christian, but I'm also massively a fan of psychology and science and things like that. And I think what it is, in this day and age, we have so much information, and I feel, this is a very personal thing, but I feel that we have the right to not know. And if anything, how could we ever know? How could we know what's going on? And I have my beliefs, but it's more about the way I live my life and the things that I rely on when I'm in times of distress. You know, I go to spirituality and prayer and things like that, but I also believe in angels and things like that, but they might come in different ways. You know, there's no hard and fast rule. I don't believe like this is the Bible, this is it, that's it, end of story. And we have that nowadays. And the reason I bring this up with you is because if you can link anything you're talking about to today's society and how it shows itself here, or how it shows itself differently here, you are again becoming that critic. You are doing that Google zoom out and saying, well, this might be the case here, but this is the case here. That might be the case in Jekyll and Hyde in Victorian times, but fast forward to our time now, and that's not the case anymore. So looking back, that must have been really frightening. And that's why people reading this novel, they were petrified of Hyde because it implied that the devil could be in anybody. And that was too frightening for them to deal with, okay? Because you were either good or bad. It was as simple as that. Right, where's the next quote, Mr. Sellers? Here we go. A sealed and stamped envelope which bore the name and address of Mr. Utterson. So this is about the fact that Jekyll knew exactly what was going on. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that Hyde was taking him over himself. And the only person he trusted was Mr. Utterson. So Mr. Utterson could be seen as the epitome of goodness, which kind of contradicts Jekyll. Oh my goodness, how can I forget that? It kind of contradicts Jekyll's belief that everybody has a duality. Everybody has two sides, this good side and bad side, and we battle this every day in every decision we make. Because he completely trusts Mr. Utterson. But what's really interesting is Mr. Utterson, when he sees the letter earlier on, if you like, the devil on his shoulder does come up, and he says, well, it's words to the effect of, don't quote me directly on this, check it out yourself, but it's words to the effect of it's almost like he was tempted to open the letter, and against it, and he believed his better judgment, and he left it until Mr. Jekyll would be dead. Dr. Jekyll was dead. No, yeah, Dr. Jekyll was dead, because that was the instruction. So even Utterson, who Jekyll trusts implicitly to the point where he leaves his will in a stamped envelope for him, he knows that he can trust him, even though we know that even Utterson has that little bit of a dodgy side to him, because we all do, don't we? We all do, apart from me. Obviously I'm perfect, but you know, not everyone could be like me. Anyway, right, here we go. Let's have a look at this one. A low French eating house, many women of different nationalities, and the next moment the fog settled, as brown as umber. This was the home of Henry Jekyll's favourite. Okay, so this is giving an idea about his hypocrisy and how he's saying one thing and living something else. And again, he goes into so much with this, so I'm going to let him talk to you about that. Please do watch the video. Next up, rather quaint. I wouldn't speak of this note, you know, said the master. So that's really interesting, isn't it? That thing of, again, hypocrisy, the criminality of Utterson, the fact that he has that bad, little bit of a bad side, and this thing of concealment as well is quite important. Is that a new quote there? Yes. A new province of knowledge and new avenues to fame and power shall be laid open to you. So this temptation of Dr. Lanyon, this thing of like trying to coax Dr. Lanyon into leading a similar life to Jekyll in his scientific experiments. And of course, Lanyon is like categorically, I don't want anything to do with you. As soon as he meets Hyde, realizes when he sees the transformation of Hyde to Jekyll in front of his eyes, he wants nothing to do with it. He thinks it's disgusting. It's beyond hellish. It's unfathomable, I think is the word he uses. And it's just too much for him. It's too much. He's firmly against that extent of scientific investigation. Let's see if I can just move his hands out of the way. But his love of life is wonderful. I find it in my heart to pity him. Okay, so even though Hyde's the one that triumphs, Jekyll pities him and has affection for him, which is interesting, isn't it? How can we have affection for that which has effectively ruined our lives and killed us and taken over our own life? It's very interesting. And it almost relates to, in these days, what might be seen as Stockholm syndrome, where people who are kidnapped create an affiliation or a sympathetic view, or sometimes even fall in love with their captor. And perhaps that's an element of this here. And you could talk about that in these days with our knowledge of psychology that they didn't have then. This could be related, could be, not is, could be related to Stockholm syndrome, which would be associated with Jekyll being the captor, Hyde being the captor, and Jekyll being the captive, and him having feelings of sympathy and empathy for the person who has ultimately imprisoned Jekyll within Hyde's body and killed him. So some really, really great quotes there, 10 for each one. Please do read those. There we go. Please do read those. Sorry, not read, watch those videos that I put on with those links. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So tomorrow we will be looking at, I think we've got revision techniques, haven't we? Let me just have a little check. Of course it doesn't come up when I want it to. I've got a feeling it is revision techniques tomorrow. Anyway, whatever it is tomorrow, we shall, oh, here we go, it's come up now. Tomorrow, oh no, tomorrow is poetry, unseen, and anthology. Yeah, so we get all the content done, then we do revision techniques, and then we do our hour of power, which is all the mindset stuff. So have an amazing day, and I will see you tomorrow. Well done, bye.